Good evening, everybody. This is Scott Morganroth for the South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network, and welcome to another edition of The Real and the Rare with myself and Xavier McKnight. Xavier McKnight, welcome back tonight.
Thanks for having me, Scott. As always, we're ready to bring the real and the rare. Hope everyone's ready for what we have to dish out in the kitchen tonight.
That's it. We got some pretty interesting storylines, but you want to get your rant out of the way about the Atlanta Braves before we go on to the other stuff?
Well, the only thing that I have to say is that, of course, it's typical Atlanta teams because, as far as I'm concerned, we shouldn't even have gotten to this point to where Game 5 even happened in this series. They blew a huge lead in Game 1. They won Games 2. They won Games 3. Gave fans hope in Game 4, only to lose that game and absolutely, completely on the wrong side of MLB history in Game 5. I turned the television over to the game at about 5:21 p.m., and as soon as it flipped over, I thought that something was immediately wrong with my eyes, Scott, because I saw a 10-0 score, and we were still in the first inning. It was absolutely unbelievable, but nothing is shocking anymore at this point when it comes to the Atlanta sports teams because, people love to say that the Dallas Cowboys are an accident waiting to happen. Well, if the Dallas Cowboys are an accident waiting to happen, what are the Atlanta sports teams? Just absolutely embarrassing, an absolute disgrace. But, what's new? This is what they do best.
Okay. Well, okay. Just wanted to let you get it off your chest. So now that you did that, let's go to the Big Apple, and you have some interesting comments about the New York Mets. Fire away, Xavier McKnight.
Well, I'm very surprised that the New York Mets fired their former manager, Mickey Callaway, last week. That caught me by surprise. The Mets, they ended the season on a very strong note. They made some trades a little there after the trade deadline where they looked a little dead in the water. And they made things very interesting in the month of August that really had people saying, if this team makes the playoffs, they really could make a run. They could be the Cinderella team of the season. Well, they didn't make the playoffs, but they ended it very strong. And they have a nice foundation to build with. They have a core of starting pitchers that is just about as good as anybody in the league when they're at their most healthiest point. Then they added Marcus Stroman to that rotation, another good young starting pitcher. So I was really surprised that they let Mickey Callaway go. But, I told you this last week, Scott. This situation reminds me of when the Chicago Cubs fired Rick Renteria after the 2014 season.
Right.
Now, Mickey Callaway, he got 2 seasons. Rick Renteria only got 1, but the situations are very similar. Loaded, stacked rosters, only a few missing pieces here and there, and, I feel like the Mets could have went on a postseason run next year. But it's very interesting to see what direction they plan on going in. The earliest name of candidates that we hear that are likely to replace Callaway is actually former MLB All-Star Carlos Beltran. That's an interesting name to me because he finished as the runner-up for the New York Yankees manager's position in the 2017 offseason that ended up going to Aaron Boone. So obviously there's some buzz out there about Carlos Beltran amongst the MLB circuit. And I'm very curious to see what he would be able to do as a manager in this league. And honestly, the way that the trend is going, Scott, most of these former players, and they end up in these managerial positions, they're doing well with these positions so far. They're getting these teams, and they're bringing a new culture. They're bringing a new feel into the clubhouses, and the teams and the players, they're responding well for the most part. The only place we didn't see this work out was in Detroit with Brad Osmus, and also when he went over to the Angels as well. He's the only guy who I can say hasn't had any true level of success with this so far. The floor is yours.
Well, that's true. Although, the reason that the Angels let Osmus go, number one, obviously didn't do well, but they also knew that Joe Madden was on his final year with the Cubs, and they know that they had their replacement probably in mind. I think it's a matter of a day or so before they go ahead and announce that hiring. And I think that the one name you brought up to me the other day that intrigued me with the Mets is Buck Showalter. So if Beltran isn't the guy, I could see Buck landing with the Mets. The only thing I wonder about with Buck or anybody that takes a job is you have a general manager that's a hothead. So who can work in that environment with a guy that's a hothead like I think was it Brady Van Wagenen. I think is he or Brody? I don't know, but he's a hothead. So can you put up with a guy like him?
Well, if Buck Showalter could put up with George Steinbrenner, I'm pretty sure he could put up with anything. But I have to make one correction to what you said there, Scott.
What's that?
I was not the person who made that suggestion. Our new teammate, Lewis, who the audience will get to know very shortly,
right.
He threw out that suggestion yesterday.
Okay.
He threw out that suggestion. He really got my gears grinding there a little on that one because Buck Showalter was not a name I was thinking about. But it would be very interesting if he landed that job. Because, as Lewis did say, Buck Showalter's been able to turn it around everywhere he's been able to go. And this would be one of the better rosters that he would be handed to work with. And I'd be very curious to see what he would be able to do with all of that talent.
Well, Lewis definitely knows his baseball, that's for sure. And one thing about him, he's dying for me to get baseball guests on. I just told Lewis we'll do it, but you better learn the other stuff. But, yeah, that's a good point. Thanks for making the correction on that. But I think Beltran probably is the odds-on favorite to get that job anyways. I agree with you there anyways. With that said, okay, we have a bigger topic in mind that's going to be common throughout the network tonight, and that's the Washington Redskins. The floor is all yours on this one, Xavier McKnight. I know you definitely want to talk about this one.
Well, I can't say enough on how dysfunctional and putrid and pathetic and moribund and any other appropriate words that I'm using right now that could be usable for FCC airwaves to describe the state of the Washington Redskins organization and how it has been that way for the better part of basically 20 years now when Daniel Snyder bought the team. He is the huge problem here. You know, Scott, it's very interesting to me. I'm sitting here and I'm watching Washington Redskins fans. They're rejoicing and they're hand clapping and they're high fiving. That Jay Gruden is out of there. Got a chance to progress and move forward. Now Bruce Allen needs to be next. I'm not going to dispute that maybe Bruce Allen needs to be next, but I will say this: I don't think he's been given a fair shake because Daniel Snyder is the owner of the Washington Redskins organization. This is the equivalent of James Dolan being the owner of the New York Knicks in the NBA. The biggest problem with the Washington Redskins is not a coach, it's not the general manager, it's not the players, it is the owner. And until he is out of there, that organization will not prosper again. I have much more to say on this, but the floor is yours on this one so far, because I have many points that I'm going to reach with this.
Well, the point is Daniel Snyder's track record has been horrible. Jack Kent Cooke owned this franchise and made it a proud franchise where they won an awful lot many years ago, long before you were probably born. They won Super Bowls. They had George Allen as their, and they had Joe Gibbs. They had a fine history of coaches. Mike Shanahan failed in that environment. Joe Gibbs' second tenure wasn't overly that great. And the list goes on and on about the coaches that they have. Now, I will say this, and I will say this totally. I do believe that this is an 11-game audition for Bill Callahan. I would not rule him out as a possible full-time coach, knowing he has 11 games. Now, I think that the way he's handling the quarterback situation, that Case Keenum's going to start this week against the Dolphins, they're thinking that in a game with two 0-5 teams, with the Redskins having not won there in several years, that Washington Redskins should come away with a win in a battle of 0-5 teams. Does that mean that Callahan's going to get hired? No. But when you talk about Al Davis for a lot of years, fizzling near the end, he was a great football man for a lot of years, and then it became hard to win in Oakland. Well, let's stay with the case in point here, okay? Daniel Snyder has a bad track record. He got off to a bad start with the folks in D.C. when he bought the team because of the fact that he wanted to charge his fan base money to see them in training camp. Boy, how do you get off on a worse note than that? You know, charging your fans to see you during training camp. And then you can see the signings that they've had. That Albert Hainsworth was a bad signing over there. boy, was that ever a bad signing. And I can tell you that there were probably lots of other players that they signed that were past their prime that should never have been there, but he wanted to go with veterans. And now, of course, I believe that the Haskins draft choice was not a very good one either, against the advice of a lot of his football people. What else? And now I like the comparison to James Dolan. You've had two doormat owners that haven't done anything, and it's obvious with their one-loss records and lack of playoff appearances through the years. Pretty hard to argue with that. And I think Jay Gruden is a quality coach. I really do. Steve Spurrier was a great offensive coach. Didn't make it there. Not that he would have been a great pro coach anyways, but he had his little NFL flirtation before he got wise and went back to college. But I'm talking about relatively big names that have been in the nation's capital that have struggled under this owner. What else do you want me to add to it?
Well, here's what I'll say. At one point, this man hired an offensive coordinator before he hired his head coach. This was after Joe Gibbs left. And this just goes on to tell you how bad that the tenure has actually been. Joe Gibbs is the only coach in Washington Redskins franchise history who ever led that team to any type of championship success. And when you can't win with Joe Gibbs, and he even came back and led the team to the playoffs his second time around, despite the dysfunction around the team that he had to deal with. But he ultimately ended up leaving because, you know, he had some problems that he had to see to with his wife with her declining health at the time, and unfortunately she later went on to pass away, God rest her soul. And after that, Daniel Snyder, he decided to be Mr. Smart Guy. I know more than everybody else in the room. I'm going to hire my offensive coordinator before I hire my head coach.
Right.
And he ended up not getting a head coach, and he ended up promoting his offensive coordinator as his head coach.
Right.
For those of you who don't know who I'm referring to the Jim Zorn era in Washington.
Right.
And how much of a mess that was. Jim Zorn, I'm pretty sure he's a nice guy. I know he knows his football, but it's very clear that he never should have been a head coach in this league. Because if any other team saw that type of potential in him, he would have received another opportunity elsewhere. Let's just call that like it is. He would have received another opportunity elsewhere. We saw Jeff Fisher receive an opportunity with the Rams after he ended up being fired from the Titans organization. And despite the fact that he had led that team to a Super Bowl appearance, that was in 1999. They didn't do too much more after that. And then we saw what he went on to do with the Rams, not very much at all. As a matter of fact, they had one of the worst offenses in NFL history his last year there before the Rams hired Sean McVay, another guy from the Redskins organization, ironically, who just went there and turned everything around. But for everyone who's very quick to point the blame on Jay Gruden and say that he was the bulk of the problem, I want to remind everyone of one thing. When Kirk Cousins was still your quarterback and Jay Gruden was your head coach, Kirk Cousins went to the Pro Bowl. Jay Gruden was the offensive coordinator of the Cincinnati Bengals before he was the head coach of Washington.
Right.
He turned Andy Dalton into a Pro Bowler. This is the same Andy Dalton who people on Twitter are joking right now is the fourth best quarterback in the state of Ohio.
Right.
And this includes being behind Ohio State starting quarterback Justin Fields. So that just goes to show you the type of football mind and the skill set that Jay Gruden brings to the table and his intangibles as well. So I wouldn't be very quick to put the blame there. But let's just talk about where one of the biggest issues on this roster is right now. Trent Williams has not played a down for you this season, and they have no way of even solving that situation. I would have traded him by now to try to get something of value in return for him. Right now, to me, this is a huge distraction on the team as well.
Right.
Because you hear those other veteran players, like an Adrian Peterson, who's coming out and saying, we sure do miss him. We understand what's going on right now, but just his presence and him being around would be a huge lift for the team. So that just goes to show you how much of a distraction Daniel Snyder has allowed that to be. And you brought up Albert Haynesworth. Of course,